Yeah, so I'm just, it gives us, or rather, it gives me great privilege to introduce to you Dr. Swarup
Mukherjee.
Mukherjee. All right, he's a physician with a specialization in sports medicine, currently a faculty member at PESS, NTU. His interest areas are in fundamental human skills, physical activity, and health in youth. He's authored 2 books, 4 book chapters, and numerous research papers in peer-reviewed journals. He has also served as an invited reviewer of over 15 top-tier exercise, science, and sports medicine journals. Okay, let's put our hands together to welcome Dr. Swarup.
Thank you much. Thank you for the kind words. Good afternoon, my dear friends. I hope the lunch is in the process of getting digested, right? For me, I deliberately had an early lunch so that I am in a good state of energy and spirit as I talk to you guys. So as Hansen has shared with you, um, I'm an associate professor with the Physical Education and Sports Science Department in the NIE, and one of the education-centered work that I particularly do is related to looking at different aspects of this term called as fundamental movement skills. All right. Today's session is a luxury for me because mostly when we speak at conferences, we are given 8 minutes. Today I'm given 90 minutes. So honestly don't know what to do with that, but I'm sure we'll have lots of fun together. All right. So this session is quite simple because I have reasons to believe that whatever I have to share with you guys, 90 to 95% of that you already know. So there's nothing new that I'm going to, bring down from planet Mars and tell you guys, wow, this is how it should be. Don't worry, there are not too many surprises here. All right? What we try and do is make it more interactive. I need to do what is your approach, your perspective, your mindset about this term, fundamental movement skills. Then we see what does the existing body of evidence say, and then we see if there is a bit more refined way to do what we are already doing in a wonderful manner. All right? So we keep it simple, we keep it connected, and we keep it interactive. That is what I plan to do today. All right? You guys are with me? Yes. Lovely. So, I don't have a remote slide presenter, so every time I go to change the slide, I'll add 10 steps to my step count for the day, which is fantastic. So thank God. No, it's fine. I just do it myself.
You can claim the voucher.
Claim the voucher. Yeah, that's a good idea. All right. I need to know how many of you. Why don't we start with the question you asked? What is the meaning of youth?
Definition of it.
Yeah. Can anybody help me define the word youth? 2 minutes ahead of time, which is great. Can anybody help me define the word youth? When we say, where is that? Okay, coaches, sorry, the word youth is missing there. It's, can anybody help me define the word youth? What exactly is the word youth? Guys, we had Youth Olympic Games hosted by our country. We should be able to define the word youth, isn't it? Yeah.
Age group from 13 to 35.
35 is huge. Many of you should already feel good about it. All right. Okay. Okay, no problem. No problems. I'm absolutely sure everybody knows what does the word youth mean. It's just sometimes our thoughts do not get translated into the right words. Let me quickly tell you a few concepts with hopefully some degree of clarity. When we talk about the young ones, we use the word children, we use the word adolescents, we use the word youth, right? Okay. The word youth is more of a social term. It's more of a social term. It represents anybody between the age of 10 to the age of 22. Okay? Now, what's special about this age, guys? This is the age where most of us are going through the process of growth, maturity, and development. Right? In some of us, like me, it stopped very early after 16, I didn't develop. Some of you, you may have an extended period of development and you kept increasing in height till the age of 18, 19. So, the word youth is more of a social term. Remember, Olympic Games is a social event. It brings the world together, and hence the word youth is used there. The word children and adolescents, they are more developmental terms. Children essentially means the group of or the age group where they are yet to achieve puberty. Adolescent means when they are going through that maturational process of secondary sexual development or puberty. All right? So these are a few developmental terms. It doesn't really matter in the context of today's discussion, but it does matter when we talk about developmentally appropriate coaching or developmentally appropriate training. Understand? So a 13-year-old is at a different stage of development. He probably has just reached puberty. His physiology is just about to change. His aerobic fitness is evolving. His perception and cognition is slowly taking that shift. But an adolescent who is 16 years old, you see both of them are still in the adolescent bracket. Who is 16-year-old has already gone through 3 years of this process. He has a much more evolved physiology. He has a much more evolved muscular and aerobic fitness. He has a much more evolved ability to adapt, make decisions, perceive, have cognitive abilities towards understanding a context. So when you coach a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, who by definition are both adolescents, but they're developmentally different, right? So that's why when we use the term adolescence, the developmental aspect comes into the picture. And that is where the developmental appropriateness of training, coaching, progression, the kind of load you want to give to the children, everything changes. All right? Clear? Okay, lovely. So, I've been working with schools for the last 2012 onward, that is 7th year now, on various aspects of looking at the fundamental movement skills. I also received a good grant from the Ministry of Education to look into this aspect. So, but that was in the context of physical education, right? Schools means physical education. Coaching is a different context, guys, right? That is about learning and development. This is about learning, training, performance, and continuous emergence, right? While there may be some sort of an imaginary endpoint to physical education, in coaching there is no endpoint, right? You always evolve as an athlete. So much so, there are some papers that say that 26-year-old is still a developing athlete. Yeah? So Neymar still needs to learn a little bit more about how to play better football. Okay. Pity that he was substituted that early. When I was invited for this presentation, it took me a while to draw a mind map of how I should structure this session, right? First thing, I should be able to connect with you guys. I should be able to tell you things that you realize, this is exactly what I do. This I can do this way. That's number one. Very easy to talk to a group of scientists. Very difficult to talk to a group of practitioners. Because they are so solid in terms of ground reality, it kind of makes me a bit nervous at times, honestly speaking. Talking to a group of scientists is very easy. Use lots of technical terms, theories, models, concepts, and we're done. But here we have to connect that theory into what can be done in real time. All right. So before I start, how many of you actually train athletes who are below the age of 16? And the rest? And the rest? Who do you train? Nobody? Okay. All right. No problems. How many of you train team sports? Team sports like soccer, rugby, field hockey, floorball, basketball, and so on. How many of you are there? Team sports? Okay, do me a favor, just shift to one side. And how many of you coach for individual sports? All right. Fantastic. Okay. Let me quickly come to. I asked for a few things. Lovely. Yes. Just keep it inside. Just you guys coach team sports. What sport do you coach? Soccer. Right. Volleyball. Soccer. Oh, lovely. So soccer seems to be, the hot property today. And individual sports. What sports do you guys do? Swimming. Oh, anybody teaches on land?
Tennis.
Sorry. Tennis. Anybody teaches badminton? But can you teach badminton if asked for? Yeah, net barrier games, right? Same concept. Okay, fantastic. So we'll make tennis. Tennis. We'll make tennis. Fantastic. So I'll have to keep you three in mind. I'll keep you three in mind. You are in good sport shoes. The gentleman from just put an award. So he must never miss a moment of glory. Okay. Yeah, I think that's perfect. So let's start off with setting the context a little bit. Because we have 90 minutes, I thought, why not let's go through the entire journey of fundamental movement skills before we reach where we intend to reach at the end of this session today. All right? Okay. Why don't I start by asking some of you, what do you mean, or what is your understanding of this three-letter term, fundamental movement skills?
Basic skills. Basic skills.
Basic skills. Fundamental movement skills. Go on. There is nothing called as right and wrong answer, guys.
Foundation. Basic.
Foundation, basic, fundamental, gross motor skills. You said a good word. They already mentioned. Oh, damn, that's why early bird always gets the worm. So when you have an answer, give it quickly. All right. Fundamental movement skills. So the words have been basic, foundation, movement, fundamental, core skills, gross motor skills. Okay. Body type. No. Body type is a different area of discussion altogether. So when you say body type means the lean one and the fat one and the muscular one, that's the somatotype. That's a different area of discussion altogether. All right. Okay. So with that understanding, let's move a little bit. Fundamental movement skills. All right. First thing, we should know why coordination. Yes, absolutely. So speak out those words. The more bricks you throw at me, a better wall I'll be able to create at the end of the day. All right. Now, this term fundamental movement skill has survived for many, many decades. And the significance of these skills has never been blurred. They're only becoming more and more significant in different aspects of a child or youth development. I'll use the word youth loosely. That includes the child and the adolescent. All right? Fundamental movement skill, although is about being able to move. I'm able to run, I'm able to jump, I'm able to do this, I'm able to do this, I'm able to do all sorts of activities. And if I am able to do that proficiently, that means, my proficiency is according to my age, if not better, then these children who are proficient in doing fundamental movement skills, they are also found to be socially more capable. They are also found to be cognitively better structured. They are also found to be more adaptable and flexible. They are better decision makers. They are also found to be one who are physically better developed. They have better health indicators. Children who have better developed fundamental movement skill also have a higher sense of self-perception. They think very good about themselves. They feel that I'll be able to do this, I'll be able to do that, I'll be able to do everything. So the self-perception in the growing years is absolutely critical to facilitate the chances of sport and involvement in sports and physical activities. They're also on the more self-confident side. Their self-esteem is also higher. And these children also show clear signs of a greater degree of involvement in sports and physical activity during the later years. They are more likely to be active adults. So these three letters, guys, fundamental movement skill is not merely restricted to basic foundation movement. It's basically an asset for life that you are acquiring in your early years or your formative years. All right? So it is absolutely critical that children get as much opportunity as possible to develop as many movement types as possible. All right? So that is the stage, that is the significance of developing fundamental movement skills. So if we have to put it into all the words that you shared with us into some sort of a definition, it kind of appears like this. It's a series of basic movement that involves combination of movement patterns in a sequential manner involving two at least or more body parts. Right? So it's a series of sequential movement that involves coordination and combination between different body parts. That's simply how fundamental movement is defined. All right? Series of movement in a sequence that involves coordination and combination of two body parts. Hand-eye coordination, eye-foot coordination, hand-foot coordination, whatever it is. All right? And conventionally, we have three types of fundamental movement skills. First is the stability skills. In some literature, you might also see this being called as balance skills. Yeah? This or this or this. These are all stability or balance skills. Right? Then you have locomotion skills and you have object control skills. Sometimes you might also hear this as manipulative skills. Our ability to manipulate an object. It may be a ball, it may be a bat, it may be a racket, whatever it is. All right? So generally, fundamental movement skills belong to these three categories. And the combinations you can bring out from these three categories, trust me, is innumerable. Okay, it's infinite. Right. Stability skills. Stability skills are those skills where you don't see conventional forms of movements. That means our conventional form of movement is moving in back to front direction. This is the direction in which we are conventionally supposed to move. Or we are conventionally supposed to move in this direction. Any other movement is lumped here. All right? So if I am turning, if I am bending, if I am twisting, if I am standing on one leg, if I am shuffling, if I am starting and stopping and stopping and starting, all this comes under balance skills. So these are those skills which are over and above the orthodox movement patterns, which is front back and up down. Okay? Simple. They're all stability skills. Right? So when you see a footballer comes in and he goes like that, see, he's not moving in a conventional manner. He's trying to deceive, he's trying to dodge, he's trying to quickly shift body weight from one part into another. There's a degree of asymmetry here. So whenever this degree of asymmetry is obvious, it is the body is trying to balance itself. Because the body loves to be symmetrical. Right? Body loves to have equal distribution of body part on the body weight on both sides. But here we see that degree of asymmetry. And that is all lumped under stability skills. When I stand like that, this is static stability. Right? But when I move and I move like that, this is dynamic stability. Okay? By the book, most of these stability skills should be fully established before the school entry age. So by the time they are 6-year-old, most children should have all the stability skills fully established. All right? Now, whether they have or not, it's a different story. Locomotion skills. Locomotion is very simple. Locomotion, like locomotion, I move my body from one point to another. This is locomotion. The movement that involves transporting the body from one part to another. I can walk, I can jump, right? I can sidestep, I can gallop, but I'm moving my body from one part to another. These are all simple examples of locomotion skills, right? And we know that most sports are basically anchored on our ability of doing different forms of locomotion skills with great degree of proficiency. Object control skills. There's you and there is an object. Okay. So there's me and there's an object. All right? Now, there's me and there's an object. All right? But interestingly, in this situation, between me and object, there is nothing else. But in this situation, between me and an object, there is an additional implement that extends my body part. You get the point? So you can have different combinations when it comes to object control skills. All right. So you have things like throwing, you have things like catching, kicking. You see, very few times you will see this word trapping as an object control skill, right? So if I ask Hansen, you see, now kick the ball back to me. Now that is a skill, and this is also a skill. You understand? But whereas in most of the literature, trapping doesn't find its way into the list of object control skills. Whereas if you cannot trap, your kicking is a half-baked skill, right? So there is a degree of complementarity between two skills, like catching and throwing. One ought to know both of them. All right, so then you have things like volleying, bouncing, ball rolling, punting. These are all different kinds of object control skills. Right, what we as mentors or coaches of young talents also ought to know is that fundamental skills like the ones we just listed are most successfully acquired in the earlier years of life. And what is the ideal age to get this fundamental movement skills drilled into your flowing blood is somewhere between 6 to 9 years. Because this is apparently the age when the wiring in the brain is really developing at a very fast speed. New neural networks are being formed. So literally new circuits are being formed. So you can actually have new sockets and new plugs for each circuit, which each one is a skill. So apparently the best age or the age most suited to develop FMS proficiency is during the elementary years. And if fundamental movement skills are able to be developed in an adequate, developmentally adequate, chronologically adequate, and proficient manner, then the likelihood that this child will continue to participate in sports and physical activity is much higher. What's interesting is that the other side is also true. So what is left has been proved, but that what is right has also been proved. Meaning to say, children who do not have adequately developed fundamental movement skills in their earlier years have been found to be grossly inactive, more sedentary, less likelihood of participation in physical activity and sports. So you have fundamental movement skills, your likelihood of sports participation is high. You don't have, the likelihood is low. And this part is not an assumption. This is proved, and this has also been proved. Okay? What we also need to develop, guys, that man by default is a mover. We've got 4 limbs, right? We can use those 4 limbs efficiently to execute different forms of movement patterns. So even if I don't have a coach, I don't have a PE teacher, I'll still pick up some movement patterns because I'm moving anyways, right? So some of the movement skills, guys, will automatically develop in the course of our growth and development. But the majority of them has to be actively developed. They have to be developed with some sort of structure, some sort of opportunities, some feedback, some encouragement, and these continue for a long period of time. So what needs to be clearly understood, guys, that if the whole gamut of fundamental movement skills are to be developed, it has to be actively done. Okay? It cannot happen automatically. Some of them do, but most do not happen automatically. And what also needs to be understood, that once fundamental movement skills are developed, that's not the end point. That's the start of the chapter 2. Meaning to say, thereafter you have to provide different opportunities of practice, different opportunities of variability, different levels of challenges, so that these movement skills which have been developed are refined in the best possible manner. And when this refinement happens, the ability of transferring these skills to a sport-specific setup is maximized. So there is a journey that a child or a young athlete travels when we talk about fundamental movement skills, is from gross movements to adequately develop fundamental movements, to refinement of that movements, to sport-specific transferability of that movement. And after that, the opportunities are endless. Okay? Right. So, children who have failed to receive adequate support in terms of developing fundamental movement skills when they were young. Literature clearly reports that there have been developmental delays in their gross motor skills. Their coordination between body parts was not as age appropriate. They experience frustration and difficulty in learning advanced movement and sport specific skills. So it almost serves like a block in your learning process. All right? And eventually, what these children do, they start looking for sedentary pursuits. That means if I, as an 8-year-old, have top of the notch fundamental movement skills, the moment I see a football, it's like, I must play with this. I'm looking for an active pursuit. But if I, as an 8-year-old, I'm really clumsy. When I run on flat feet. I can't jump. I can't do most forms of object control skills. When I see a football, I really don't like it. I rather do something which is non-physically active, which is more of a sedentary in nature. All right? So the choices that children make is also influenced to some extent, if not to a large extent, by the extent of their fundamental movement skill proficiency. Okay? That means it is also a factor that influences behavior in children. And you see the second point, it also reduces sports competence perception. We as youth coaches, we want kids who already have that inbuilt element of competence. That when I see a football, I should have that belief that I'll be able to play that game. I'll be able to handle that ball. I'll be able to dribble past my defender. All right? Children who have low fundamental movement skills don't have this perception. And when they don't have this perception, getting them into coping with the demands of an organized sports environment becomes an uphill task. All right? Thank you. Okay. Anytime. Right? Okay. Now, as I said, this topic of fundamental movement skills, be it in physical education or be it in youth sport, has been a topic of interest at a global level. Okay? Loads of literature are available in terms of fundamental movement skills. We'll talk about studies from 3 countries, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. Countries who are doing a lot actually in terms of fundamental movement skills. If you put together all the studies, the combined understanding is this. They show that in that critical age between 8, 9, 10, 11, the mastery on fundamental movement skill is rather low. Okay, their neuromotor fitness is quite inadequate or insufficient. And studies who continued for 6 years, 8 years, like long-term studies, they found that when these children became adolescents, the low fundamental movement ability continued to track into their adolescent years. They were not too proficient in playing games and sports. They were not too proficient in demonstrating refined levels of fundamental movement. And eventually, this becomes a predictor for inactive lifestyle, poor quality of life, and adverse health outcomes. Okay? Right. A lot of studies have been done from those countries. Before I did this study for the ministry in 2012 to 2016, we had absolutely zero database of the fundamental movement skill proficiency in Singaporean children. So I had no starting point when I embarked on this study, right? So almost started from the scratch. But just to share with you what is relevant to today's context, this is what we found. We looked at children from many schools who just entered P1. And we did this study in the first 3 weeks of their start of school. That means they had no exposure to the school PE curriculum as yet. That means we saw what they had at the point of entry to the school, right? Watch carefully what happens, guys. If you see let's just focus on the rightmost cluster, where you see the arrows. It is a combination of the boys and girls put together. The black part of the bar represents the percentage of children who had mastery in that skill, and the gray part of the bar represents the percentage of children who had near mastery. Near mastery means if running requires 4 elements, they had 3. So they just missed it by one element. If they missed it by more than one element, they are not included here. That means it's inadequate. All right? So let's see. In terms of running and galloping, which is the two leftmost bars with green arrows, we had about 78% children at the age of 6 to 7.5 who could run proficiently. Hang on, there's other part of the story. 22% children at the age of 6, 7 or 8, age of 6 or 7 were not even able to run properly. Okay? I think that's a huge cause of concern. If we look at the object control skills, that means their ability to kick, to dribble a basketball, to strike a stationary baseball or sponge ball, just kept there. They are going to see this, they have a bat, and they have to strike. That's it. If you look at the 6 skills on the right side, you will see the mastery levels are all below 10%. Even the near mastery levels are below that red line indicates 50%. Even the near mastery levels are below 50%. That means our children are in a bad shape when it comes to controlling objects. They are not in a very good shape when it comes to simple movements, but they are really in a bad shape when it comes to controlling objects. If you look at 3 skills in particular, one is kicking, other is jumping, and the third is hopping. Now, the common element between these 3 skills, it requires lower limb strength and coordination. Kicking, jumping, and hopping. These 3 requires lower limb strength and coordination. And we found that these 3 skills were really, really low. That means while children are developing, the element of muscular development and the element of neuromuscular development that should have happened has not happened. They cannot generate the force, and they take one step and they fall like this. So they cannot generate the force and they cannot control it. All right? But we said, okay, so what you see in the yellow box below is that none of the FMS was mastered by all children, and no child mastered all FMS. We didn't have a single child who showed mastery on all the 12 FMS. All right? But we said, okay, they are just coming into the primary school. Maybe some of them had opportunity to go to kindergarten. Some of them just grew up with their grandparents. So we come up with some sort of an explanation. So what we did after this, we looked at the primary 3 children. Right? Primary 3 children have more than 2 years of exposure to the school PE curriculum by trained physical education teachers. Who trains them? Okay.
Trained by you.
All right. So here most children had below average or poor rating. We give them marks according to the skills they show, and based on that marks there is rating. In primary 1, most children had below average or poor rating. Okay. With great hope, we looked into the primary 3. And guys, we find nothing has changed. If we have to draw a graph, actually these kids became worse off compared to their age in primary 3. If you see clearly, the kicking, jumping and hopping continue to be alarmingly low. All right? At the age of around 9, let's keep a median age, so 8, 9, 10, age of 9. 9% of children in Singapore could kick a stationary ball. I mean, the damn ball is there. It's not running away. It's just there. All that I have to do is take minimum of 3 to 5 steps. Okay? 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
1, 2, 3. I can take more number of steps. I have to take minimum of 3 to 5 steps in a pattern of running. That means at one point my both feet should be in air. All right? I take 1, 2, 3 steps, place my non-kicking foot anywhere in the line of the ball. It can be slightly behind, it can be next, it can be slightly forward. All okay. and I have to kick the ball with any part of my feet except the sole. And there should be some sort of a follow through. That is all that they are supposed to do, or they are required to do. 91% of children at the age of 9 were unable to do this.
When we had the class.
Oh, this one is 2017. This is a 2017 publication. Right, right. Of course, because this was a Ministry of Education grant, we had to give feedback that is applicable to the school curriculum, right? So, therefore the reason. But I would love to actually come to ActiveSG and repeat the same kind of study to see, I'm sure about that. Alexander Durich tells me a lot about what he's doing there, if he's still doing it. All right, so what we see here in real time is both at the start of school as well as 3 years into the school curriculum, the FMS in children in that critical age window is very, very concerning. Okay, it is not just about, if you look at the age of 9, we still have 20% children who cannot run proficiently. Okay, and therefore, it is definitely an important area to be brought into discussion. Again, if you see the yellow box below, none of the FMS was mastered by all children, and no child showed mastery in all the FMS. And most of them actually had poor rating here, not even below average, right? But the most common rating was that of below average or poor. Okay, so that is a snapshot of what we found in our own context.
May I ask?
Yes, go on,
All
please.
these studies, how many children are
300 children, about 300 children, because it's a funded study, so we have to calculate statistical power so that the numbers are enough to give us a feel of the entire population. So these children were 300 children from 6 different primary schools from 6 different parts of Singapore, so that we have a fair geographical distribution and also some representation of socioeconomic variability that might exist. Yeah. Right. So in Singapore we are fantastic at comparing people. The moment we have something, we make a comparison. So the comparison that all studies make in this kind of area is with that of a normative sample from the US population. All right. So if you look at the yellow boxes versus the yellow boxes, the yellow box on the left shows the scores in Singaporean children in terms of object control skills. So you have 4, 1, 6, 5, 4, 5. In the same movements, the American normative population showed 21, 23, 40, 25, 30, 21 at the age of 6. At the age of 9, our children showed 20, 15, 23, 7, 14, 10. They showed 47, 72, 76, 66, 52, 40.
stage consent?
Right. So what you also see is even with and this is not the top population, this is just the population in the 50th percentile in the United States. All right. So this is just the norm population. So even compared to the norm, we are yet to, go distance and meet that degree of proficiency. So what we found that the motor age was lower than the chronological age. Meaning to say, the scores that we found at the age of 6 should be shown at the age of 4.2. The scores that we found at the age of 9 should be shown at the age of 5.4. So their motor age and chronological age were not in sync. Okay? While chronological age was moving faster, the motor age was moving much slower. So this becomes quite a concern because in our context, it's very clear that insufficient motor skill proficiency is not going to lead to a behavior that can predict high degree of sports participation. And if motor proficiency is there, then there is a high chance that higher sports participation in future can be predicted. This 6-year-old is more likely to pick up a sport form earlier than others. All right? So that is our concern. If FMS is well developed, the predictability of sports participation and better skill development in the future is higher. And FMS is not developed, this predictability becomes very, very low.
We do have gold medal.
Right? Okay.
Can it be because of this sort of difference? Can it be because of diet also?
If somebody can tell me the reason, I will recommend you for the next Nobel Prize, honestly speaking. If anybody knows the reason, or you can throw some light on this, please feel free to share with me now, 1 hour later, a week later, but please share with me.
So much iPhone.
What's the question? Why this was low in Singaporean children? Why this was low in Singaporean children? Singapore is a first world country, one of the highest GDPs, one of the highest foreign reserve. Okay, so diet being not sufficient or not correct, it's
No.
the government will not be happy to hear that.
It's not because food that they eat, it's the food that we eat.
See, food is important. Both diet and nutrition in growing years is important, but it cannot be the sole predictor of a phenomena like this, right? This phenomena is an outcome of multiple correlates. It's about the individual, it's about the parent, it's about the culture, it's about the environment that you live in, it's about the education status of parents, it's about the socio-economic conditions of the parents, it's about the activity level of parents. Our previous studies have clearly shown if both parents are physically active, the chance that the child will be active is 70%. It is still not 100%.
I disagree.
All right? If only mother is active and the father is not, the chance that the child will be active is higher compared to if only the father is active and mother is not. So mother's physical activity is far more stronger a determinant for child to become physically active.
But Doc, that's where we come in, right? When you say about parents and point of view.
Trust me, you come in everywhere. Because coach is the only character that can develop as both mother and father. Yeah, so I'm taking nothing away from you. Taking nothing away from you, right? Okay. Yeah, so when you say diet, it's important, but there are lots of other factors that we need to bring into consideration.
So, sir, if you are talking about having FMS at this stage, why not suggesting FMS to be developed during the preschool?
It is
curriculum?
definitely happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in NIE,
That would help.
now we have NIEE, which is National Institute of Education for Early Childhood. So now we are actually training preschool teachers
To do that.
to
More free time.
learn
Free time.
A long-term
how
solution. to-
yes, how activity can be developed in a structured and progressive manner, so that when children are coming to the school age, they are reaching that level of proficiency, so physically, movement-wise, cognitively, and so on. So
Maybe
that's
good
all.
news, yeah.
Yeah, that's really a good news. And we have dedicated people who are actually developing this. All right. So now, I would request my football coaches, the two of them. Anybody who has never played football in his life? Huh? Or anybody who has played very less football in his life? Anyone? Oh, thank you for volunteering. Come. Okay. Tennis coach, football coaches. Which other age group you deal with?
Preschool?
No, I just need him first, then I'll call you later. You just stay. Sorry, what's your name? Just. Okay. Preschool. Oh,
All the way
preschool.
to 12 years old.
Cool. That's a very interesting age. Now, we have Coach Just with his football, and we have Ricky, who is a 5-year-old. Mentally, he's still 5-year-old. Okay. Now, Ricky, show us in the next 2, 3, 4 minutes, how would you make an attempt to develop some of the fundamental movement skills which you find is relevant to play? We use the word football. Football means soccer, but we still use the word football, old school people. What would be your approach? To teach him. Yes, I like that word, to teach him. Because FMS needs to be taught initially, and then it needs to be coached. So that's a very good word to use. So claps for that. All right, so think about it, that this is the early days, and you want Ricky, your 5 or 6-year-old trainee, to pick up some fundamental movement skills which will facilitate his introduction and achieving some sort of proficiency to play the game of football. Just give us a demo. Don't worry about what is right, what is wrong. In coaching and teaching, there is nothing called as wrong. All right? It is only good and better. And better continues to get better. So no holdbacks in terms of, Alama, will I do it right? Never mind. You definitely will do it right. But we just want to see and understand what is your approach. You are representing most of the youth football coaches in Singapore. All right? So I'll take it like that. Pressure. Now pressure. Yeah, of course. Go ahead. Just listen to him and take and do whatever he says.
Okay. First thing.
Ricky, come on. Be a dedicated football trainer.
Some effort, Ricky.
Come on, Ricky, wake
Okay,
up.
now for the next 30 seconds, I want you to move the ball without the ball.
Okay, I want you guys
Do whatever you want to do with the
observe
ball,
this.
but the ball don't stop.
and see how this picture translates into whatever sports you coach.
Do whatever you want to do with the ball, just don't stop the ball. Okay, now doing the same thing, I want you to move the ball. Okay. As long as the ball don't stop, it's fine. Whatever you want to do. Okay, now try to use only your right leg. Keep moving, keep moving. Okay, move your body along. Adjust as you move. Okay, now switch to only your left leg.
Okay, just you got one more minute to teach him maybe something else.
Okay, now, next one. We did our right leg, we did our left leg. Now I want you to pass from your left leg to your right leg. Left leg to your right leg, left leg to your right leg, left leg to your right leg.
Okay?
Okay? Come.
Right? Nice. So,
Okay, open up your body wider a bit. Left leg to your right leg, yes.
so we see a coordination, foot to foot, and we see a sequence, right? Here to there to here to there to here. Thank you.
Okay, now we switch. Tap the ball. So the ball is stationary, tap the ball. Right leg, left leg, right leg, left leg, right leg,
Okay.
left leg.
So we see the pattern has changed, but the element of sequence and coordination is still there. All right? Okay. Good job, guys. Now, Ricky, I want you to hold on.
Okay.
And we invite.
Be slow.
High performance coach.
No, he's not just preschool. The interesting part about, sorry, what's your name?
Julius.
Interesting part about Julius is that he coaches all the way from preschool to 12-year-olds. So he sees through the phases of early childhood as well as late childhood, and maybe to some extent into the start of puberty as well.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So Julius, you have Ricky. Say, I give in the same context a 5 to 6 year old young football enthusiast who's come to him and he hasn't played much football. Maybe he has observed his dad or his elder brother and maybe some matches in the television. What would be your approach to get him, learn some basic movements that you feel is useful for him to smoothly blend into playing this game?
Okay. How are you, Ricky?
Okay, good.
Okay, I'm going to teach you how to hit the ball.
Okay.
If you come closer. Come closer. Okay, so now what you're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to kick the ball on this part of the feet. Okay, this part of the feet. Just hit in the middle of the ball and try to hit the corners. Okay, I'm going to go in front of you first, just to build your confidence. Okay, so you look at me once, I'm doing it, and then you try. Okay, just look at me where I'm putting my leg here, the side, just lift up my leg, just hit the corner. Okay? Right?
Nice.
Okay. Oh.
Screaming, the yay of the crowd.
Okay, ready? Just put your leg here. Okay. Bring it closer a bit. Okay, now. Make yourself balance first. Okay. Lift up your leg. Now lift up the leg, swinging the leg like that. Now like this. Okay, then hit the ball like that. Okay. Ready? And go. All right, man, buddy.
Job, Ricky. All right.
Okay, so
Something else?
Okay.
Something else?
So now what you do is you're going to turn the ball. Okay, now this is you're facing the wall here. Okay. Roll the ball, then you turn with the ball, and then you follow the ball. Okay? Try. Just try only, don't worry. You make a mistake means at least you try. Okay? Your leg here, okay, ready? Just roll at the back. Turn around. Alright. Okay, come back again. Okay. And I'm going to teach you how to trick the ball. Okay, let's do some tricks in the sense that the ball is here. Just move to one circle, two circles without touching the ball. Are you ready? Oh, not Ronaldo, it's Julius. It's Ronaldo. Okay. Alright. Alright, roll. Yes. Okay, good. Okay, now I'm going to teach you how to stop the ball. You know, normally when you play with your friends, they always throw the ball and everybody starts screaming. Okay, but the first thing you got to do is try to stop the ball. The ball is bouncing, just try to stop the ball. Okay, I'm going to throw for you, then you try to use your leg. Ready? And go. Stop. Oh, see, it's too far away. But good try, good try. One more time, ready? Go. Put your leg up. Yes. Okay, so now let the ball touch the ground. Before you touch the ground, it's easier for you. So you don't have to do this. Okay? You don't have to do this. You just wait for the ball to reach exactly before reaching the court. Then you do this, it's easier. Okay? Ready? And go. See, oh, you're making it high again. So it will be very difficult for you to balance. Ready? Go. Wait for it. All right. See, so much easier. So now try using a left leg also. Okay, now you got to try to use a left leg. And go. Now see how you're moving like this. You can't balance right, so it's not comfortable. Ready? Go. All right, man. That's it.
All right, lovely guys. Oh, Christmas may be far, but Santa is already here, isn't it? Okay. Now I need you guys to chip in. We had two different coaches. We had the same participant because we have wanted to have control over one part of this entire exercise. All right. Let's ask the team sport coaches. What was the pros and what were the cons about the first attempt to develop a few skills in tricking? Anybody?
First one, they were given time
Okay.
and personal space to explore. It was an objective. He said, okay, move the ball. I don't care how you do it. Because here's some space and move it however you want. So that's a pro, I see it, because the kids get their own time and space to explore what they can do. And as a coach, you sit there and you observe, oh, this kid has
Okay.
aptitude and talent or not.
Okay, fair enough. Accepted. And what more could have been done?
What more?
See, this was not a physical education setting. This is a youth sports setting, right? The context is coaching for a particular sport that requires a particular set of skills to execute a particular set of actions to meet a particular set of objectives. Correct? So, do you think he could have thought about something else?
It was later narrowed down to a more specific action that, and skills that he was trying to guide them to.
So what? Is that good or bad? I mean, there's nothing called a bad.
It's a different approach.
It's a different approach. Okay. Any other perspective on the same response, guys?
Demonstrations? The first one? Yeah, more demonstrations.
There was demonstration. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Anything else that you may have picked up or you think you would have done differently? I mean, there are no right or wrong answers, guys. I mean, if you're looking at me for an answer, I really don't have any. All right. So it is just like.
I think, yeah, I quite agree with what she mentioned about this self-discovery. Yeah, and then maybe slightly more is just to give an analogy of a certain movement.
Okay. What do you think about his approach and what do you think about his approach?
trouble. I feel
No, because I'm sure he learned a bit from him, and he learned a bit from him, right? And we all learned from both of them. And that is exactly the objective of coming together in this.
I feel when you talk about Ricky's age group, he's 5 years old.
Okay.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give him a ball, of course, but I'm just going to show him how to do it first.
Right.
What am I trying to tell him? To move around with the ball. Okay, move around with the ball.
Right.
If I have a marker in the middle,
Right.
then I move around and then come
Right.
back to the marker.
Right.
So I'm teaching him to be like a disciplined kind of guy.
Right.
Because if you ask a 5-year-old to spread out, they will never do it, no matter how long experienced you are. So if you put a flat marker on the ground, and you see that just move around it. When I say go back to the markers, then you go back to the markers. Okay, that's if I'm showing you, it's much more easier. That's what I'm doing just now. And I show you how to do it, and then when you do it, you got it the first time. So it's interesting already.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
So
Okay. Yeah.
different legs, of course. Once you get this confidence, and you can do
Fair
whatever
enough.
you want.
Fair enough. Okay.
Something I learned from him was his method of instruction,
Right.
the way he was instructing the kid.
Okay.
As
That is-
compared to me, I was a bit more like, okay, I want you to do this.
Okay. All right. All right. So, okay. So a bond created already. All right. So, what the two coaches themselves, bring out is one had a little bit more evolved method of instruction, right? The one had a bit less of a structure and more of a context in that approach, right? Straight away he put a cone. That means apart from the individual's intrinsic movement, there is another element in the environment. So what you see developing here is a sense of interactivity between the individual and probably something that environment which represents a goal. And successfully achieving that goal brings in a sense of reward. Right? Okay, good. So, with that kind of an initiation, let's move on to a bit more focused area of the session today, that for a youth coach, the context is different from that of a physical education teacher. All right? For a youth coach, the context is driven by different approach, different pedagogies, and different objectives. Right? Let's quickly talk about the fact that for young children, essentially they have two resources for development of fundamental movement skills. Resource number one is the PE teacher in schools, and resource number two is a coach. All right? Why do we call these as resources? Because they are deemed to be the domain area experts. They are deemed to have the right content knowledge. All right? That's why the word resources are used. Okay. Now, interestingly, as we discussed right at the start of this session, physical education and sport are two different contexts, and each of them have specific learning objectives. A PE teacher has a curriculum that he has to meet. There is almost like an endpoint where he has to stop, and he moves to different unit plan and different set of lesson tasks and activities. They have specific delivery pedagogies. I have never seen a PE teacher, never in my 24 semesters of observing PE in schools, coach or teach kicking the way Julius did.
So I'm a PE teacher and a
But you clearly are a hybrid character. There is no doubt about that. I could see that there is a structure and there is a construct to your approach, but I could also see that there is a context to your approach. And you were very quick to bring that context into the center stage of executing this teaching. That was very clear to me immediately. All right? Both these contexts have specific learning outcomes, and both these contexts have specific progression paths. The way Julius will take on Ricky in 5 years from now is not the way the PE teacher Julius will teach Ricky in 5 years from now. All right? So both these elements, or both these resources, or both these approaches have their own specific characteristics, both in terms of objective, execution, outcomes, and progression. The world has always been divided in terms of fundamental movement skills. We have had proponents who feel that fundamental movement skills should be developed as the first thing. Okay? Because early acquisition of fundamental movement skills means, whoa, everything good about it. Self-confidence, self-esteem, self-perception, self-competency, higher predictability of participating sport, everything comes as a positive outcome. Very nice. Everybody is happy. So the whole world agrees, let's do this as early as we can. Okay? But these proponents, they also said that if the fundamental movement skill proficiency is low, they will not be too keen on participating in sports and physical activities. Fantastic. And they said that these set of fundamental movement skills, they are important prerequisites because once you have them, only then you can play certain games and sports. This is what the proponents of fundamental movement skills have always been emphasizing on. And traditionally, this school of thought has adopted the approach which is called as a binary logic approach. That means when it is based on whether the skill exists or it doesn't exist. Yes or no. And this yes or no is also based on a set of criteria which is yes or no. If I'm asking a child, if I'm observing a child's kicking skills, I see whether he runs to the ball, where he places his non-kicking foot, which part of feet does he use to strike the ball, and if there is a follow-through. Okay? Yes or no. Is he running to the ball? No, he's not running. He's walking to the ball and then he's stopping before the ball. Okay? We observed this, many children did it in our study. When they came to the ball, their non-kicking foot was behind the ball. So it's a no. So this logic, these proponents of FMS, they adopt a binary logic. The skill exists or it doesn't exist. Based on a set of criteria that exists or doesn't exist. The font size is too small here, but I'll help you read. So the table on the top is about the skill of running. There are 4 performance criteria. One is arms are moving in opposition to legs with elbows bent to some extent. 2, a brief period when both feet are off the ground. 3, narrow foot placement. That means when they are landing, either they're landing on the toe or they're landing on the heel. If they land flat foot, that's wrong. Okay? And number 4, non-support leg is bent at least up to 90 degrees. If all these 4 criteria are present, yes, he is a proficient runner. Okay? Similarly, for striking a stationary ball, dominant hand grips the ball above the non-dominant hand. That means, this is my striking bat, dominant hand grips above the non-dominant hand, not the other way around. Okay? Then, non-preferred side of the body. So if I am to hit the ball there, my preferred side is right, non-preferred side of the body should face the direction in which the ball is to be propelled. Yeah, all striking fielding games are all on the same thing. Okay, then hip and shoulder rotation. There has to be a hip and shoulder rotation, transfer of the body weight to the non-dominant foot, and the bat contacts the ball. It doesn't have to strike the ball a mile away, it just has to contact the ball. Even if the ball drops there, it is still okay. Alright? Now, if these skills are present, he is a proficient striker. If they're not present, he is not a proficient striker. So this is the approach that is adopted while observing fundamental movement skills. So not surprisingly, this is also the approach many times that adopted while developing them. Because if I know my question paper, I prepare my course accordingly. Alright? Okay. So this has been the situation, the binary logic approach, yes or no. This binary logic approach emphasizes on developing the technique, striking technique, running technique, galloping technique, kicking technique, whatever. It emphasizes on developing the technique. It doesn't connect the technique with tactic. It doesn't connect the technique with skill. It doesn't connect the tactic with skill. If I have to stop here for a while and ask you fine gentlemen and ladies, what is your understanding of the word technique and what is your understanding of the word skill? Tactic, we are very clear, right? What is the difference between technique and skill?
Skill.
Skill, yeah, skill. Go on.
I can do a skill with that. So for example, I can kick a ball, but I can kick it very ugly and still be okay. As in,
But kicking the ball itself is the technique part.
Okay.
Correct or not?
Skill is the ability to do something.
Like?
The ability to perform the particular, perform a particular action.
All right, you're getting lost in your own thoughts. Okay, that's all right. That's all right. Any other thought, guys? What is skill?
Technique is just, how you, like, it's like jumping from here. I must have the technique to pull my whole self and my body up to jump to the next. So that's technique, is that every part of my body.
Technique actually is the final outcome of that movement pattern. Correct or not? My movement pattern is arm swinging
But if I
back.
doesn't have the technique to do that, I won't
Now,
reach
in
that.
that movement pattern, there are a set of smaller techniques which collectively form the larger technique, which is jumping. So my result outcome, my jumping technique is good. Now, what on earth is skill then?
Actually, technique can't ask the skill. When you have the skill, you come up with the technique.
Wow, okay.
No, I didn't.
I also thought the other way around.
Yeah, skill for everyone might have a skill.
You need to have the skill to
Skill
develop.
is developed, right?
The technique must come out with the
It's
technique.
developed.
Technique is also developed.
Yeah.
No, but after you say technique first, then skill.
Correct, which is true. I agree on this part.
Okay.
Technique comes first, and eventually
You have
it
the
becomes
skill.
a skill.
Yeah,
But what
it's
is that skill? Yeah, sorry, you were saying something.
Technique plus pressure equals to skill.
Okay,
mastery.
technique plus pressure. Yeah, you're very, very close. I can smell that answer. I cannot see it.
Develop
Come on.
the skill, right? So develop the skill you can use it in other sports as well. You can use it
All
in
right.
other sports, yes.
Julius, come over here. Come. Do some dribbling. Just go there, dribble and come. Okay. The guy is good, man. Isn't it?
Yeah. Better than you.
Me too. Come, we go for Tezai after this. Okay, stop. What do you see here? Dribbling technique or dribbling skill?
Using technique.
Dribbling technique. So how to make this into a skill?
Practice, close the eyes.
Just your turn. No, you're not going anywhere. Okay, go dribble past him.
Apply.
Oh, okay.
And you don't allow to dribble past him.
Skill is
Okay? So, what our friend here said, when there is pressure, when there is resistance, when there is some sort of an opposition that brings in the element of constraint, your technique evolves as a skill. All right? So, what you see in these two situations, when you are doing it without a pressure, without any opposition, or without any constraint, it was pure technique. But the moment we brought in that element of, you see, what did you see now? One more time. From here, just dribble past him. You see and observe. Go. Just dribble past him. Okay? What we saw, that a new movement pattern emerged when we put in the constraint of defender. This is not how he was doing his drills when he was doing on his own. He was very comfortable. He was following almost like a set pattern of movement. But now he has to respond to the environment. He has to respond to others who are in that context. That creates a sense of opposition. All right? And the moment an opposition is created, this serves as a new constraint. And when a constraint comes in, a new movement pattern emerges. So the techniques immediately emerges to something which is best suited to deal with that opposition. That becomes a skill.
Not reflection. Reflection.
Not reflection. Everything is reflection if you really ask me.
So
There is-
because like what you just said, he suddenly switch, is his reflection and his mind is thinking quick.
Yeah, okay. I mean, let's not hunt into different words in English. Everything is reflection. See, when he's doing it alone, there is still a reflective element. All right? But when he is doing in opposition, there is still a reflective element. That leads to a response. Right? But this response is an outcome of the constraint that we provide to him in the form of a defender. All right? And when he is able to execute his technique to overcome that constraint, it becomes a skill. That's the whole idea. So reflection is a pedagogical term. It can be applied in every context. Every context. So you're not wrong in saying that. You're actually quite right, and it's a very rich piece of thinking. All right? But it's very important that we understand when we use the word skill, we need a context. We need to use this word in relevance to not just the individual dynamics, but also in relevance to the environmental
But
dynamics.
if he's got technique, then he will have very quick reflection to switch.
True?
Ah,
True?
so
True, you're right. And this ability of quick switch
Yeah.
is the skill
he
part.
switch because he can read he sees the
True.
movement of the opponent.
Exactly. So what he's now doing, he is having a cognitive stimulus to respond to a situation. All right? So there is element of a constraint, right? Element of constraint, element of response, element of quick recalibration of your technique, and emergence of a new pattern. All right? This collectively becomes skill execution.
So now this is a call of group. Consider a group.
Yeah, we will come to that. You're right. Let's talk about, let me give you one example. Anybody plays golf?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Perfect guy to talk to. Right. I have mostly heard, I used to play golf a couple of years ago, no time now. Also, my knee surgery after that cannot bend, so it hurts. When we talk about golfers, we usually use the word fantastic golfing technique. Have you heard this word, golfing technique?
Technique.
The,
Okay.
the technique of the swing?
Yeah.
Okay? Seldom will you hear the word golfing skill.
Golfing skill.
I have never heard the word golfing skill. You know why?
Skill you must hone.
Yeah, but there has to be.
Technique
Yeah,
is
fair enough. This is becoming an open-ended discussion. We will talk about it. You're not wrong. But we need to just talk about it. All right. Okay. So the proponents of this FMS who propose binary logic, that means the yes/no kind of a criteria, they say that, okay guys, if you want to kick, just kick the ball. Here's the ball and kick the ball and keep kicking the ball and keep kicking the ball. Don't worry about refinement. As you get to play more, as you get exposed to more situations, your technique is going to emerge naturally in a refined manner. Right? This is what has come out of the school of thought from the proponents of pure fundamental movement skill developers. Okay. This school says we will teach fundamental movement skills in early years. We will emphasize essentially on the individual. That means only on the intrinsic component. That means you and the ball. That's it. All right? And it says that FMS is a pre-structured sequence of movement dynamics or movement patterns, which is done in a linear manner. All right? That means I take the ball, 1, 2, 1, 2. There is a clear sense of linearity here. Right? It's very structured. It's not going anywhere beyond this. And the context or the understanding that why am I doing that skill and when I should do that skill, this one can develop later. All right? So this group of this group of proponents, they say that earlier years develop the fundamental movement skills. Don't worry about the understanding part. We'll figure out later. Because they feel that unless you develop this fundamental movement skills or techniques, you're not going anywhere. So let's just do this. All right? But as more evidence comes into picture, as more evidence comes in terms of how alarmingly low fundamental movement skills in children are, okay, this approach has started to get questioned. This approach has now been labeled as isolated. This approach has not been recommended as the best practical pedagogy to develop movement techniques and movement skills in youth sport context. All right? So if this approach is not that good, what is a better approach? Let's try and dig a bit into that aspect. This is your context, guys. It cannot be exhaustive, but for a youth coach, you are dealing with a very complex set of attributes to develop the athlete. And what you see there, fundamental movement skills occupies, I'll send you the slides, don't worry. Everybody will get the slides. Okay? This is not national secret. This is for everyone. This is for everyone. So don't worry about taking pictures. You know, just be with me and let's do it together. Right? So what you see here as a coach is not just developing fundamental movement skills to make a good athlete or a good player from out of that child. You have multiple areas to hone. You have multiple areas to develop. All right? You're supposed to develop on this side, you know, cognitive abilities, social abilities, visual motor abilities, their physiological capabilities, muscular fitness, posture control, agility, coordination, decision making. You are dealing with a very complex situation here. And fundamental movement skill is just one part of that puzzle. All right? So the context of youth sports coaching in terms of developing FMS is way more complex than other contexts of developing FMS. Okay? So what has been proposed is that youth coaches should adopt slightly more inclusive approach in developing sports related fundamental movement skills. Now from here I'll be very careful in using my words. Okay? Youth coaches should be more inclusive towards developing sports-related fundamental movement skills. These skills, ideally, should not be developed in an isolated manner. Okay? For youth coach, or youth sport coach, it is absolutely critical to understand the relational dynamics between the individual, which is the person and the ball, and present a context that supports emergence of a non-linear and a self-emerging pattern. All right? Meaning what? When Julius had the ball, after a while what we observed that his dribbling techniques were getting repetitive. You move, you turn, you go, you move, you turn, you go. All right? Although you started as an emerging pattern, but eventually it was becoming linear and structured. But when we put into the context another constraint, suddenly that linearity became non-linear and a new structure emerged. All right? And these three elements of the individual dynamics, non-linearity, and self-organizing pattern. You self-organized it. If I give you another player there, all right, let's do this. Come, three of you. No, award winner cannot come. Julius, Just, and sorry, what's your name? Jason. Lovely. Now, we first have only Julius, without Just and Jason. It's all about J today, is it? Julius, Just, and Jason. Okay. All right. Just practice some dribbling techniques on your own. Okay, 30 seconds of dribbling technique practice.
Warm up.
Nobody. Yeah.
Warm up.
Okay. See, after a while, you will see a pattern there. 2, stop. 1, 2, stop. 1, 2, stop and turn. Right? This is becoming linear. Dribbling becoming very structured. Okay? And it's becoming repetitive. All right? Now let's put Just into the picture. All right? You got to get faster. And you exactly know what to do. Okay? So, lock the space. Don't let it get fast. All right. Let's see, guys. You see? And you see a new pattern immediately emerged. It's a new pattern of movement. Yeah, it's an action. Of course, everything is an action. But within that action is ingrained a few movement patterns. We're still into that. Look at that. All right? So, a new pattern image. So, the linearity was broken. Okay? Now, we will give Julius another constraint. Jason, who is Julius's teammate.
All right, then, buddy.
Yeah, he already knows where he wants to go. You see that? He says, what is that? Now let's see when they play, what happens. So he has another constraint. Yeah, go. You see that? How did this happen? They planned for it? Obviously not. This is the third element, the self-organizing pattern of movement emergence. All right, lovely guys. You almost like it. Oh, I wish I had people like you. Fantastic. All right. So what we just saw are three elements here. We saw the individual without any constraint. We brought in one constraint, a new movement pattern emerged. All right. We brought the second constraint. There was an automatic self-organization of those movement patterns. All right. And this is called as the relational dynamics of fundamental movement in youth sport context. All right. So there is no fixed structure, there is no linearity, and there is a continuous emergence of movement patterns in a non-linear, self-organizing manner. And this approach has been proposed to be the more practical pedagogy of movement skill development in the youth sport context. Okay? All right. So you have three levels here. Look at that. You have three levels in this. So what we saw here is almost something called as movement dynamics. Right? It was continuously evolving and emerging across three levels. At the individual level, in response to the environment, and in response to others. One other was his opponent, and the other was his teammate. So while he has to look at his opponent and think differently, he also has to look at his teammate and think differently. Okay? So what is important to understand, based on the current set of evidence and the current recommendations, is development of movement skill in the context of youth sport should be beyond just the individual interface. It has to factor in the environment, and it has to factor in others. Yes, please.
When he was doing first linear, going there, you added one more person, correct? But as a kid, he wants to take the ball by himself unless the planned and told them.
That's
correct?
all right. That is where feedback comes into picture.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to.
Of course, yes, absolutely. These are real experts in the sport. You can see that kind of dribble, man. I wish I could do that when I was 13. Yeah, but you're right. That is exactly where feedback comes into picture, and that is exactly where coaches comes into picture.
Yes.
Right. So you're right in pointing that out. Okay. Right. So what we saw here are three things. The intrinsic component, that means the way the individual was dealing within himself. That's one. Two, then the individual component, and then the interactive component. These three I's and the complex synergies between relational dynamics of these three I's, it becomes the center stage of movement skill development in young children. All right? So now what has been proposed in a very recent set of published evidence, that when they're in the context of youth sport coaching, you need to exploit the complementary relationship between movement skill development and game skill development. So FMS, which is fundamental movement skills, and FGS, which is fundamental game skills, should be developed hand in hand. And they should not be developed one after another. It has to be, that is where the relational dynamics comes into picture. All right? And remember, you see that FMS and FGS, it's not a dichotomized relationship. That means, oh, you come first, then you come later. Both of you go hand in hand. All right? And this has been proposed as the new conceptual framework for developing movement skills or movement techniques, as you might want to call it, in the context of youth sport coaching. So, we split these two now. On one side, we keep just the fundamental movement skill, where you have the individual doing the movement. All right? In your case, without any constraint. There were isolated movement. There was a coordinated pattern. 100% it was there. But it was becoming linear and structured. New patterns were not emerging. it was about your intrinsic movement dynamics, and eventually we could see that you could dribble the ball. We are happy about your movement proficiency. But the moment we brought in the constraints, you see we put in additional elements. We had the individual, it has to be there. We had the movement, it was also there. We had the environment, we had a context. Now suddenly you become the attacker, you became the defender. You had roles to play, and decision is based on the roles that you play. And you had spaces to move on. All right? So what was happening in the second case is the interactivity and the relational dynamics in action between multiple components that govern the learning and execution of skill in that sport. And right from the early stages of a child's involvement, they should be provided with this entire large or collective context to develop the skill within that context and not in an isolated manner. Okay? Right. So, when we tease out the individual from the bigger package, we saw two clear dynamics emerging. One was between individual and the others, that others could be against you, other could be for you. All right? And second, between the individual and the spaces. You exactly knew what was the kind of space available. Now I put the three of you right now inside that white box. Okay, come. Let's move another constraint. Okay, for Julius, you will first do it individually inside the small white box. You do individual dribble in a smaller white box. Small white box. So now what we do is we put in the constraint of space. This guy is damn good at what he does. Despite that constraint, he is still able to manage the same kind of movement pattern. All right. Now, just to get it, now use the entire white box with Julius. Julius, you somehow have to keep the ball with you, but you cannot go outside this big white box. So now what you see is shielding starts happening. It didn't happen when the space was not a problem. All right? Just you have to get the ball, you cannot kick it out.
Okay, stop pushing.
Yellow card, yellow card.
Okay? So suddenly you see, when we put in a change in that space constraint, the dynamics between individual and spaces change. And the dynamics between individual and others also changes. So there is interactivity between individual, space, and others. And the moment you bring in a constraint, this dynamics reorganizes or self-organizes in a different fashion. All right? Now, with Julius, Jason, and Just. Julius, you have to pass the ball. Jason will be ready to receive the ball if Julius passes the ball. Your roles are the same. Your roles are the same, but you have a constraint, you cannot go outside my house.
I never hear you put yourself.
One more line. So you see, they are running out of ideas now. The same two players who went past the defender like a breeze when the space was there, they're actually running out of ideas. All right? Okay, one more time. Come on.
Come on, man.
Oh, hey!
That was not in the menu card. All right, good job, guys. Okay, so what we saw here, we saw this entire package. We saw individual, we saw movement, we saw others, we saw the context, and we saw the spaces. And we saw the relational dynamics between all these at the same time. All right? When we change the space, the individual, others, and the space relationship also got recalibrated. All right? And that was the non-linear self-organizing part of this emerging movement pattern. When I gave you the third chance, we saw a new movement pattern emerging immediately. All right? So, this is what is a more practical pedagogy of movement skill development in the context of youth sport. All right? So, what we did here, we gave you different constraints. Sometimes we gave you the constraint of just one defender, then we gave you the constraint of having another teammate, then we gave you the constraint of a smaller space. And what we saw, that the movement dynamics changed in each of this situation. Every time you came up with a self-organized thought and broke that linearity or that structure in your movement dynamics. And this, if you look at the yellow box down, this is exactly how FMS in youth sport should be developed and should be observed. It should not be observed from a yes-no perspective. It should be observed and developed to see how the relational dynamics are getting established, to see how much ability of coming up with a non-linear and interactive movement pattern is developing, and how this is emerging over a period of time. That is a youth athlete for you. Okay?
So are there
Yes,
any
go on.
Developed,
I was about to ask any questions. Yeah.
and are there any developed observation assessment for such thing yet?
Unfortunately, no. Therefore, I have something a few slides later for you. Unfortunately, no, because this is a complex process. And when you have a development rubric, it is usually on a yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no thing. All right? But that is not where we want to arrive at as a youth coach. This is where we want to arrive at as a youth coach. Okay? So if you ask me if there is anything to observe or rate this, unfortunately, no. But just let me just move on a few slides, probably you will understand. So this slide almost represents the conceptual framework of the current standing in terms of what is a more practical pedagogy in developing fundamental movement skills in complementarity with the game skills in the youth sports context. Okay? Right. I'm almost describing the two of you now. One had the ball and the other didn't like that you had the ball. Right? So what we were doing is ball control, eye-foot coordination, keeping the ball close to the feet, body swerves, quick accelerations and speed changes, multiple movement directions, dodging, deception, etc., etc., etc. All right? So what you were doing, Julius, is your individual intrinsic part of the fundamental movement skill. And that was the nature of your FMS. But interestingly, what he was doing, you see there are very, very overlapping attributes. He was focusing on the ball. He was trying to mirror your movements. He was also dodging, decepting, quickly changing speed so that you get, off balance. But he was doing his part of the skill. And we cannot treat this as two separate entities. He was doing in response to you, you were doing in response to him. So your skill emergence was strongly determinant on his resistance, and his resistance emergence were also strongly determined on your skill emergence. And this is exactly the relational dynamics that we're talking about. Okay? Right. Now, coming to your question. We saw two distinct components here. What he was doing as an individual and what he was doing collectively. All right? With all the elements, the environment, the context, the space, the others, the movement, the him, the everybody else. But within that collective unit was an individual unit. Right? And that individual unit possibly can be rated using some rubric. All right, that one we can do. Okay, so that space still remains open. So, developing movement skills in youth sport needs the action from the individual, which we saw, but it also needs to be factored in by adding the dynamics and the patterns in a non-linear and self-organizing manner. Okay, and if your athlete is able to do this, he is on the right path to progression. The moment there is failure of emergence, the moment there is element of linearity, this guy is not getting anywhere. And you therefore have to provide him with a continuously evolving set of constraints, one after another. 1v1, 1v2, 1v3, attack overload, defense overload, whatever. Minimum 5 passes, I don't know, whatever. Yes.
I feel that this is like mostly targeting the team sports, but individual sports.
Right.
are really-
Okay. Tennis coach, come. Tennis coach?
No more.
Oh, no more.
Swimming coach.
Swimming coach, tennis coach, tennis coach. Anybody can help play badminton. Why don't you come? Okay. What's your name? Dawn. Okay, Dawn. Dawn. Rachel. We have Dawn and we have Rachel. Rachel is a 6-year-old. She loves to play badminton, and she has come to you to get better at playing this. Here's a racket. Here's a shuttlecock. All yours. Help her learn the basics or the foundational movement or the fundamental movement skills to play the game of badminton. Now we have an individual sport, right? We don't have the team sport. Now we have an individual sport. What I want you, good people, to understand is the transferability of this conceptual learning from one context into another. Okay? The sport changes, the entire structure changes. But what you will see, this is still applicable. Okay? So, go on. You have space, Lots of space. Come on.
What's your name?
Rachel.
Richard. Okay, the first thing we learn about things, we learn about the flight of the shuttle. Okay, how you track the flight of the shuttle. So what you're going to do, the first thing before you use the racket is you can throw the shuttle and try to catch it. Throw and catch it. Okay, try now.
So now, there is no environment. There is no context. There are no others. There is no relational dynamics.
So that's good. So now what we're going to do is, next we're going to do is, I'm going to throw it to you and you're going to catch it. And you're going to throw it back to me. Throw and catch.
Don't worry. No, we're all learning. Don't worry. It's okay. We're all learning.
6-year-old.
6-year-old. Okay. She's got into the character. All right.
The good drop well.
That's good. So you're learning to catch. So now I'm going to give you the right hand.
Okay.
What you're going to do is, I'm going to throw the shuttle to you, and you try to trap it. Okay? Now maybe I'm just going to throw, and it's going to touch the shuttle. So what you can do is, for now, is you can put the racket this way, I'm going to throw, and just get it. Yeah, just try to touch it. Yeah, that's it. Good.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
You're just trying to contact. Good. Okay. So learning the flight of the shuttle. That's good. After this, next you're going to do is, you're going to take the shuttle, take the racket, and you put the racket in front. And you're just going to hit that. Put your racket in front, drop the shuttle here.
Good job. Good job. All right. One more time. Come on.
Good.
Okay. One last time. Come on. Show off. Show off. Good job. All right.
6 years old.
6 years old, but it's all right. We see that the coaching is progressing. It's emerging from basic learning the shuttle flight to the next movement to striking the shuttle over a given distance. All right? But still, you don't see any relational dynamics. Not yet. Okay? To see the relational dynamics, you play some better than good. Really see that. Now.
So earlier I was mentioning, so for since if it's a kid, right? For adult, you can take the full
Right,
racket
right.
length.
Of
For
course, of
children,
course,
you can-
of course, of course.
So now what
We're
you're going
talking
to
that
do
everything
is,
is developmentally appropriate.
so now you're going to hit to me, and I'll try to hit back to you, and you try back to hit back to me. So maintain the same way. This way back, keep racket this way. Good.
Swag.
Okay, one last time. One last time. Why? Good.
8-1. Service over.
Okay. 1-0. Come on. Keep playing. Keep playing. Now you have to make sure that the shuttle goes above these poles. I'm ready to sacrifice.
Just hit in between the legs.
All right. I was almost going to. All right. Lovely.
Lesson over.
What did you observe? We had three different situations.
Yes.
What did you observe? In first situation,
It was just without the object. I mean, without the.
without the environment or the context.
Yeah.
It was just you and your intrinsic dynamics.
Yes.
Okay. Then what happened?
Then he introduced to me some basic.
A task.
Yeah.
A task which had a goal.
Yes.
Right? So the environment came into picture. You have to beat that task. So you have to come up with some sort of new calibration and a new coordination and some sort of emerged control over there. And then what happened?
And then you put in the context.
Then you had another player. So your movement were in response to the others. Right? And each time you were not sure where he was going to hit the shuttle. And you were getting ready. There was anticipation, there was decision making, there was response. This is the relational dynamic. Then I put in another context. Alright? This again another element response to the space. This again represents the relational dynamics between the individual, the environment, and the others.
But I feel that this is like still because it's applying to games. So, but what about swimming? What about?
Okay, I hope nobody will ask me that question. Come, sit.
Swimming.
Swimming.
You two come.
Oh no, it's okay.
Okay.
No need, no need.
Okay. In some of the literature, she asked me a question. What about swimming? What about swimming? Okay. You want to say something?
No, I listen to you.
Sorry. One's orange. Bob, no more orange.
So, in some of the fundamental movement skill literature, you do see swimming in the list of locomotion movements. But we need to understand that the bulk of the fundamental movement skills are the ones which are more orthodox, which are done over land. So swimming is still to gain its acceptance as a universally acceptable fundamental movement skills. So at this point in time, we just keep it beyond the discussion. All right. Okay. Yes, we just finished soon. I'm almost there. So, skillful play in the context of youth sport has been suggested to be a mastery of the individual dynamics, the mastery of the interactive dynamics, and all of it coming together as a collective unit that emerges in a non-linear and self-organizing manner. And this is an outcome of the constraints that you put in into the context of teaching. So here you have, so what has been suggested that at all stages of skill development, right from the early age, the complementarity between the movement skills and the game skills. That means the individual and the interactive element has to be put together. Okay? Now, interestingly, both these elements can be practiced separately and they can also be practiced together. Right? That means they should be able to accommodate each other. That means a young athlete who has adequate proficiency over this individual and interactive element should be able to shuffle quickly between the individual part of the movement and the interactive part of the movement. All right? And the faster he can shuffle, the greater mastery he demonstrates over that skill learning. Right, so what exactly this is what I meant. They should be able to execute both these elements, the movement part and the game part, as an independent unit as well as a larger collective unit, coming out as a non-linear self-organizing pattern continuously emerging, and that eventually decides the pattern dynamics of the overall game. Okay. Right. So the last slide. So the way the current practices are evolving, the way the current pedagogies are being recommended, isolated approach in a linear and structured manner without a context, without anything to interact, has not been suggested to be sustainable or of much purpose when it comes to youth sport coaching, right? Ideally, youth coaches should bring in both the elements together, the individual part, which is the movement skill part, and the interactive part, which is the game skill part, as one collective unit. That's one. Two, they must factor in the relational dynamics that emerge from the interactive components, which is the individual, space, others, environment, context, everything bringing together. They should provide authentic practice conditions while teaching fundamental movement skills, right? Because this eventually makes the child a better decision maker in different contexts of the game. All right, and this is what we see many of our youth actually lack, right? Our youth sport is very prescriptive, right? It is not really, you don't see reflections of good decision making, right? So this is something that might also help our youth to become better decision makers, develop better tactical awareness. And we need to understand that there is no end point to this. This is a continuously and ever emerging process that needs to be supported at every stage of its development. And exactly what Julius did, there has to be some reward in this entire process. Because with reward comes enjoyment and sustained motivation to keep learning and to become refined and to excel in that sport. All right, so, all right, that was the last one.
Thank you.
Thank you for being such a patient listener. Thanks to all these guys. Thank Jason, Just, Julius, Rachel, Don. Thank you very much. All right, there's my email. I will upload the slides for all of you to look at. If you have any questions to ask, anything to talk about, please feel free, because the more you discuss, I'll also learn more. All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Coaches, could you hang on first? Yeah. Okay, let's be more generous with our applause and give Dr. Sarawati one.
Oh yeah. Videographer?
Okay. Videographer too, okay. Thank you. Oh yeah.
Okay, coaches, another thing, if you observe this, if you see this piece of paper here, it's for your feedback. So please go to